I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Friday, November the 22nd, 2013. The Jerusalem Post reports, citing Palestinian news agency Ma'an, that Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekat will be staying on in his role as chief negotiator for the Palestinian negotiating team. However, the rest of the Palestinian team will be replaced. A Palestinian official told Ma'an that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas rejected the resignation of Erekat, but did accept the resignation of negotiator Mohammed Shtaya. The official said Shtaya and the rest of the Palestinian team, all of whom handed in their resignations over a week ago, over what they said was no progress with Israel in the peace talks, as well as over Israel's continued construction in the settlements. Abbas told French news agency AFP that talks with Israel would go on. He said, "We have committed to continue the negotiations for 9 months, regardless of what happens on the ground. We are committed and we will go to the full 9 months, and then we will take the appropriate decision." The next round of peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians is set for next week. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power condemned the remarks made earlier this week by Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in which he referred to Israel as a rabid dog. In an interview with CNN yesterday, Power said that the remarks were, quote, abhorrent. Earlier yesterday, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry told the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee that, quote, obviously we disagree with Khamenei's statements profoundly. Kerry said it's inflammatory and it's unnecessary, and I think at this moment when we are trying to negotiate and figure out what can and can't be achieved, the last thing we need are names back and forth. Some officials in Israel had reportedly expressed disappointment that the United States had remained silent regarding Khamenei's remarks. As we reported to you yesterday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reacted to the remarks while in Moscow this week, addressing Jewish leaders, where he said the comments show the true face of the real Iran and reiterated his promise that the Iranian regime would not have nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, in Geneva today, Iran and the P5+1 continued their negotiations to try and reach an agreement on Iran's nuclear program. Western diplomats said some advances had been made. Iranian negotiators said that as well, but there were still issues that needed to be worked out, one of those issues being Iran holding on to its right to enrich uranium. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif told state television that there was progress, although differences of opinion remained. And turning to Israeli politics, opposition labor leader Shelly Yachimovich lost the election in Israel yesterday for the party's chairmanship. Yachimovich was beaten by Knesset member Isaac Herzog, who will now lead the Labor Party. Herzog, who is the son of the late former Israeli President Chaim Herzog, won 58.5% of the vote, with Yachimovich getting only 41.5%. Yachimovich wrote on her Facebook page, "I respect the democratic decision. I will cooperate with Herzog to strengthen the Labor Party as an alternative to the Netanyahu government." The Jerusalem Post reports that Syracuse has become the second American university to suspend its ties with Palestinian University Al-Quds. As we reported to you earlier this week, Brandeis suspended their partnership with Al-Quds after a demonstration by Palestinians at the Al-Quds Jerusalem campus on November the 5th, where protesters marched in black military gear with fake automatic weapons while offering the traditional Nazi salute and carrying banners of, quote, martyred suicide bombers. Syracuse University Senior Vice President for Public Affairs said in an email to the Jerusalem Post that the school had indefinitely suspended its ties to Al-Quds as well, saying, "We are very disappointed and saddened to have learned of these recent events at Al-Quds University," and said that Syracuse's Institute for National Security and Counterterrorism would end its ties with Al-Quds indefinitely. The Associated Press reports that a never-before-published transcript of radio coverage of the Nuremberg trials have been donated to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. Harold Burson, who is now 92, covered the trials in 1945 and 1946 for the American Forces Network. He donated the transcript on Tuesday of this week, 68 years to the day after he began reporting on the historic military tribunal, which produced the first legal documentation and evidence of genocide by the Nazis during World War II. The museum's director of curatorial affairs, Scott Miller, called the transcript an incredible eyewitness primary source of history. Miller said of Burson he was witnessing the testimony of Nazi criminals, the captured German photos, the captured German film footage, the captured German documents that were shown at Nuremberg, shown to the world for the first time. He witnessed them become the evidence of the Holocaust. A conference was held at the United Nations last night to highlight the plight of Jewish refugees from Muslim countries. The conference was convened by Israel's mission to the UN, the World Jewish Congress, the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations, as well as Justice for Jews from Arab countries, with the goal that American and international diplomacy recognize the rights of the Middle East's Jewish refugees on an equal footing with those of other refugees in the region, including Palestinian Arabs. World Jewish Congress President Ronald Lauder said the world has long recognized the Palestinian refugee problem, but without recognizing the other side of the story, the 850,000 Jewish refugees of Arab countries. Yet for any Middle East peace process to be credible and enduring, it must ensure that all bona fide refugees receive equal rights and treatment under international law. Aside from Lauder, the conference included presentations from Israeli Minister of National Infrastructure, Silvan Shalom, as well as Israeli Permanent Representative to the UN, Ron Prosor, and Conference of Presidents Executive Vice Chairman, Malcolm Hoenlein. And renowned author, Nobel Prize laureate, and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, along with his wife Marion, was honored this week by the World Jewish Congress with the organization's Theodor Herzl Award for the couple's lifetime achievements. In attendance at the gala, which was held at New York City's Waldorf Astoria Tuesday night, was former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. She said the Wiesels played a pivotal part in bringing the Shoah, or the Holocaust, into public consciousness. Clinton added Ellie's own story of survival and those of others he's helped tell has steeled the world's resolve that such an atrocity can never be repeated, adding that the Wiesels have worked to overcome indifference toward the suffering of oppressed and marginalized populations across the globe, including refugees from Cambodia, prisoners from the former Yugoslavia, and victims of the genocide in Darfur. World Jewish Congress President Ronald Lauder said the Wiesels have had an enormous impact on the world and said that they continue to shine as reminders of what Abraham Lincoln called the angels of our better nature. After receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986, Wiesel and his wife established the Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity, whose mission is to combat indifference, intolerance, and injustice through international dialogue and youth-focused programs. The World Jewish Congress's Theodor Herzl Award recognizes individuals who carry forward Herzl's ideals for a safer, more tolerant world through international support for Israel and enhanced understanding of Jewish history, culture, and peoplehood. And today marks the 50th anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas on November the 22nd, 1963. And today on Shalom TV, Professor Jerome Chanis of the Center for Jewish Studies at CUNY's Graduate Center sat with Mark Golub on L'chaim to talk about the profound positive impact President Kennedy had on U.S.-Israeli relations. That L'chaim special can be seen again on Saturday at 6 p.m., Sunday at noon and 6 p.m., and Monday afternoon at 3. It will also be available this weekend on the Shalom TV website at www.shalomtv.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Friday, November the 22nd, 2013. Remember, live Shabbat services from New York City's Central Synagogue are coming up at 6. I'm Teisha Bader. Shabbat Shalom.